Just waiting for it to connect. Okay, everybody. I have to turn my YouTube off because otherwise it will echo me. So I can't keep it on at the same time. Okay. Excuse me, please. All right, everyone. Welcome to this Autistic Voices Roundtable discussions. My name is Philip King Lowe. I am the owner, producer, and host for today's Autistic Moment, a podcast for autistic adults by an autistic adult. Please visit todaysautisticmoment.com to learn about the podcast, listen to the shows, and find the transcripts. You can go to the future shows page for all the podcasts coming up through the end of June. Be sure to return to the page Autistic Voices for announcements for future shows or watch the shows from the past. What I tend to do is that when I'm setting up a new Autistic Voices Roundtable discussion, I will have a moment when I will announce that I'm seeking the panelists. And what I normally do is I set up the panelists to set up the invitation for panelists to apply by the 31st of the month before I actually have the roundtable discussion. So that's normally how I do things. The purpose of Autistic Voices Roundtable discussions is to give autistic individuals our opportunity to talk with each other about what matters most to us. Because we all know that autistics are often left out of those conversations, or we get spoken to like we don't know what we're talking about. And of course, we know better. This Autistic Voices Roundtable discussion is being sponsored by Looking Forward Life Coaching. Looking Forward helps their clients turn the stumbling blocks of life into stepping stones towards success. Visit them online at lookingforwardlc.org. The other sponsor of this event is Minnesota Independence College and Community. Minnesota Independence College and Community is a life-changing educational opportunity to help autistics and others with learning differences to take a step toward independence and a vibrant life. Visit miccommunity.org for more information. Thank you so much to Looking Forward Life Coaching and Minnesota Independence College and Community for help to make this program possible. Back in May 2021, I had Samuel J. Levine on my show to talk about justice in employment for autistic adults. Samuel J. Levine is the director of the Jewish Law Center and a professor of law at Touro College in New York. Among the comments that Samuel J. Levine said is that the matter of employment is, quote, one of the key areas of effort, of advocacy, and frankly, of discrimination. It is fair to say that statistics have borne out that autistic adults are disproportionately unemployed and underemployed. The negativity around autism and our quote unquote deficits suggests that autistic people cannot be successfully employed. During 2023, today's Autistic Moment and Autistic Voices Roundtable discussions are focusing on the strengths and achievements of autistics. The fact is, there are many autistics who are very successfully employed. And some of us are self-employed, we own businesses, work in professional environments, and work in part-time or full-time jobs. And incidentally, I'm going to, before I introduce my panelists and start asking them to answer questions, that today's autistic moment is my own business. And I am a business owner, and I've been doing this now for, I'm in my third season of doing this, and it has been amazingly successful. One of the things that I am going to stress is that the neurotypical majority has for way too long defined what the word success means. Okay. In their mind, and I'm being very general here, success in employment looks like you've been working a job for a long time, you get promoted, you get the biggest check, you get the biggest everything. All right. And that's supposed to be the definition of success in employment. And I want to say that there are those of us who are autistic that simply cannot work in that kind of environment. We don't fill out applications or send in resumes and just get jobs. We have different ways of getting our jobs. And that's why so many of us actually have our own self-employed businesses. But that does not mean that we are not successful in our own way. And my panelists here today are people who are employed, who are working places, and they're succeeding. They're making a difference wherever they're working. And we're here to talk about those of us who are successfully employed. And I want to introduce my panelists. Today, I've got Angela, Dylan, Philippe, Kayla, and Grace. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to start our panelist questions and conversations. And I want to thank our panelists so much for being here. If you're watching live on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. I'm so grateful that you're here with us. I cannot monitor the comments on YouTube and that sort of thing because I have to keep the YouTube closed, otherwise my voice echoes. But you're welcome to maybe comment if you wish, and I will do my best to get to those comments to answer questions as quickly as I can. So let's begin with our panelists, and I'm going to start with my first question. Actually, my first question is more of, tell us your name, give us the general location of where you are, and what kind of work you do. Be sure to mention that you are a business owner, employed, self-employed, where you work, what you do. Tell us how many hours you work in a week and that kind of thing. Give us a general idea as to what you do. I'm going to let Angela go first, and then she will ask the next person to go after her. Angela, go ahead.
Thanks so much for having me here. I am Angela AJ Locascio, pronouns she, they, and I am a professionally licensed teacher, a board certified sexologist, and I am the executive navigator and CEO for Umbrella Alliance. Work, let's see, how many hours do I work? I really love working. I love working. I find so much value personally in the work that I do. So I work anywhere between 60 and 80 hours a week.
Yeah. Okay. I'll pass it on to the next person.
Yes, Dylan, please.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, hi, my name's Dylan. I'm based around the Midlands in the United Kingdom. Leicestershire is the county I'm from. And when it comes to what kind of work I do, so I am employed, in which I do like web design for a recruitment company, but I'm also self-employed as I've just recently started my own autism consultancy. And I only literally started it in the last year or so. And when it comes to the kind of work I do as an autism consultant, I do a lot of work with like local government health services, and I run advocacy groups as well as work with charities. And I've started now doing direct work with businesses and school visits. The hours I work a week can vary vastly. Sometimes I will only do about 30 hours a week, and sometimes I can easily do 70 to 80. Like if one day alone, I can either do 2 hours of meetings, or one day I've had over 10 hours of meetings alone before. So next, Philippe.
Hi everyone, I'm Philip Gautic. I'm a Belgian citizen and I'm based in Barcelona. I've been working as self-employed. Actually, it's going to be 10 years, 1st of March. So, woohoo. And yeah, I work currently, well, what do I do, right? So I'm a fractional CMO. It's basically a fancy way to say that I work kind of as a part-time head of marketing. And I usually work with tech startups, mainly business to business. That's just been my focus in the last 6 to 7 years. And I work currently with one company from Belgium remotely. And I have an arrangement, agreement with them, and I work 3 days a week. Sometimes it's between 3 to 4 days a week. And yeah, I also volunteer 4 hours a week for neurodiversity in business. Actually, they're also based from UK. And I just started doing that kind of a month ago. So yeah, that's how I'm spending my week. And next, Kayla.
That's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla, she, her pronouns. I'm based in the United States. And what do I do for work? So my day job is that I work in a financial institution, and that's about 40 to 42 hours a week, depending how busy we are, what my inertia is feeling that day. We'll talk about that. And then sometimes I tell folks I'm in between side hustles. So as of about 2 autumns ago, I was a scare actor in a haunted house. So I don't say I don't do that anymore, but I don't say I don't do that anymore. I'm kind of in between right now. So yeah, Grace.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Grace Ogden Parker. I am in Oregon, which is on the west coast of the United States. For those who are not familiar with Oregon in the United States, I know some parts of the world are not familiar with Oregon. It's not that exciting. I am a business owner at the moment. I have also, regularly worked as an employee of other jobs over my lifetime, and probably will again in the near future. But at the moment, I am a business owner. I work part-time, so it's like about 25 hours a week doing social media for small businesses in the area. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot my pronouns are she, her.
All right.
Do you need my descriptors as well? I didn't notice anybody else giving descriptors.
How many? Give us an idea of how many hours do you work? I mean, it can be a general or a little more specific.
25 hours a week.
Okay.
But that's because I'm taking care of my son, so I don't work full time right now.
Yeah, well,
he's wild.
There is no such thing as being a part-time mother, as far as I'm concerned.
Nope. I've got him quiet for the moment, so it's time to take advantage of it.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
I think we're back to you now.
No, yep, we are. All right. Very good. Thank you to everybody who answered the questions. My next question to you is, when you're thinking about the work you do, tell us how you believe your autistic identity helps you to do the tasks that your job requires. A lot of times when many autistics have either lost a job or having trouble on a job. It's our autistic characteristics that often are scapegoated, as reasons. But I happen to believe that when we embrace our autistic identity and we learn what our gifts actually are, that alone can actually help us to exceed, excel, and succeed. And sometimes I think it's important that we communicate with other people exactly what those successes are. Kayla, I'm going to start with you, and then if you would move to the next person after you. Go ahead, Kayla.
Sure thing. So the biggest thing that comes to mind, at least in my current role, and I know you talked about this a lot, but that's like the hyper empathy.
Yeah.
People will call me for anything and everything. And a lot of the time I get real into it on what's going on. It could be the most minute thing. And it's like, nope, I'm here for you. What else do you need? Okay. And then, and that works both ways. Like sometimes I get too, like I'll feel it way too hard and then it bothers me the rest of the day. So that's both ways there. As far as like my biggest flex, again, and then this is like a corporate thing too. So during the pandemic, we all had to go home. They gave us laptops. And with that, I didn't realize as an autistic that I had severe demand avoidance. And I didn't know that until getting rid of those demands, like almost opened up this like budget to where I could just go beast mode at my work, to the point where I was treating my job like I was at an arcade. Here's what I mean by that. So every Monday they send reports. Who's doing this much work on the team? Here's the leaderboard. Here's the audits. Here's the quality percentage. And I was like, if my name's not on the top of the list, I'm gonna keep working until it is. And then like the next week, all right, do I still have that top score? Okay, cool. And then just keep moving on. And it got to the point where I would log in on like a Wednesday. There's no emails, which is weird, for that organization. And I thought like, I'm going to lose my job. I've been doing all the work, or my coworkers are going to be gone. Like, so yeah, eventually, so that's how kind of my superpower, hyper productivity kind of propels the inertia to do my job and make me very productive, which is, like you said, there's very tough as an autistic person to like do well in the workplace, but it's like, you know what, if I budget enough, I can, and get a rhythm going on it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Who's going to follow you?
Oh, popcorn, delete.
I knew it. So, I mean, literally the same answers from me. I kind of noted exactly the same. So, first of all, I just wanted to say that, first of all, I haven't really, kind of used or, haven't been revealing my autistic identity longer than, August 2021. So basically in the pandemic, it all kind of came together. And definitely it's the hypersensitivity and ability to pick up on smallest detail in the room, in people's, behavior. And partially that's, I think, just because I'm able to pick up on it, but also it's because of kind of a lifelong hypervigilance. So I'm trained, my brain is like hyper trained to notice that. And that can be a great asset to help others, to save my own butt sometimes. Sometimes it's a distraction as well. I mean, it's not like I can just turn it off, but it comes out. Oh.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
But I see it as a power. And the second one is definitely the hyper focus and the ability, and like just the achievements based on my hyper focus that I've had, where I was able to do things for myself. I mean, for example, start my own self-employment kind of story 10 years ago. I did it totally, from from scratch. I built my own kind of website, pages,
Mhm.
online assets, and so on. Or for my clients, I'm able to deliver the work in a good way, based on that. So yeah, one example, I was able to finish my MBA while I was also working as self-employed, which cost me a lot of anxiety as well. But I was able to do it because of the ability to kind of hyper focus before the exams. So I think there's a couple of things that have been useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm nominating Dylan.
Thank you, Philippe. Well, with me, empathy, definitely. Like, because with a lot of people I work with, especially like parents, if they've had their children diagnosed, like I do get questions from parents sometimes that, oh, downright offensive, but I'm able to play it as if I kind of see where they're coming from to then actually make it more accepting for them. And I do a lot, like I say, with my advocates, with other businesses, I'm able to sometimes pretend to see where they're coming from, if it means I can then get them seeing everything in a more positive manner. Unfortunately, I am not hyper-focused. I'm one of those, I get very easily distracted because I do an awful lot of things. But what I do have as well is really good memory recall. So it's like for dates, whether it's in my own life or like for anything in history. And when I'm working in recruitment, even if I've been helping out in other roles, if it's like coming to like employment law, or if it's coming to, for example, a candidate needs to get to a certain job and their car's not working, everyone in the office will go to me because they know I've memorized all the bus routes. If there's a potential company who's not doing anything completely correct by the law, I'll have picked up on it and shown where in the law it's wrong. And I'm able to just give that information to the point where I'm actually nicknamed Siri at work. Because I'll come up with the answer often more before they can Google it. I'll have the answer more often than not. Next, Angela.
Thank you, Dylan. So I did not, on the previous question, say where I am from. I am originally from Kansas, going back there soon. Currently located in California because we travel a lot I'm a military spouse. So now that I've answered that question, let me get to this one, which is communication. I am a master communicator, and that has been honed through years of using other skills that I have, which is detail oriented and observing. And that means that I am able to hear or see what somebody is saying and needing at the moment, clarify that I am actually hearing and seeing what they need at that moment, and then providing a response, whether that response be, I'm just listening to you right now, or we're problem solving right now and we're going to do something. Providing them the space to be heard in that conversation, and then picking up on the patterns that are happening through regular conversations with that person or others who are talking to me about that same thing. I always say that when I'm having a conversation, I may not be looking at you, and I'm kind of looking around, and I see like the old Microsoft screensaver, the pipeline. That's kind of what I'm seeing as I'm going through a conversation. And, where is this going? And what does this person need the most from me out of this conversation so that I can truly participate? And Grace.
Thanks, that was wonderful. I would say that two things really stand out to me, although I really relate to a lot of the things all of you have said, except for the communication thing. I think that's amazing that you have great communication, because I struggle with that. Even though I talk a lot, I struggle with it. For me, I would say attention to detail has been a really strong suit for me in work situations. Maybe it's not as important in my current job. I mean, it's not important at all, but it's not as critical as some of my other jobs have been. But it's been very critical in previous jobs, and I've been highly sought after at work for very high detail projects because of how critical my attention to detail can be for those projects. But the other thing I found is kind of unique to me that I have seen a lot of non-autistic people can't do, and a lot of autistic people have been expected to not be able to do, which is I have a unique way of multitasking. And a lot of people say that people who think they're good at multitasking aren't really good at multitasking. They're just doing everything badly. But it's not true for me, depending on the supports I have. So what I do is I set up my supports for myself. I go and so a lot of computer programs have like macros, which is like you can set up a little recording of your task. So you set it up for anything that you do that's repetitive to record it and then play it every time you push a certain button. And so I would have multiple screens set up. So I'd have multiple monitors and multiple programs open and multiple document holders up holding the different documents. And I would just pay very close attention while I'm working on one thing at a time. I would look at it, I would press the right macro, let the macro run, turn my head, pay attention, press the right macro for the other one, let it run while I move back, check my work, start the next one. And I would do this, and I would have like 4 to 6 programs running at the same time while also dealing with someone at the window or the phone or another coworker or something else, and doing excellent attention to detail. And that's not my current job, but that was something that I did very well with high quality precision. And I found that that was a unique thing to me because a lot of my coworkers did not have that kind of focus that they were able to do. So, okay, thank you for the heads up. I know I tend to go a little long.
That's all right.
But that was my unique thing. I think a lot of my coping skills come from toxic circumstances that I have learned how to cope with.
Yeah. No. Thank you for those answers. And those are all really great. Yeah. What led you to start your business or apply to work at the job where you're working at? What was your passion or your motivation? I'm going to give you kind of an example from the work that I currently do. Doing a podcast was really the last thing I had in my brain that was something I was going to do. But I needed to find something to do because I'm on a healthcare program here in Minnesota that requires us to bring in a little bit of money, just enough money to qualify for the program. And I was working with some folks at the Minnesota Department of Rehabilitation and Vocational Services, and I just happen to say my passion has become autistic advising people about autistics, because autistic adults has become one of my great passions. And mostly because of my experiences, my first 7 years, I felt like I was literally a hermit. Like I didn't know anybody else who was, and I felt like I was truly lost. And then once I discovered the Autism Society of Minnesota, they gave me this education in this community. I was like, wow, if only I could give more autistic adults this kind of thing. So I was talking about this with the folks at Minnesota Department of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and one of them said the word podcast. And I kind of was like, yeah, right, Well, anyway, so, and then things came forward. But it was recognizing my passion for autistic adults that was the fuel that began that search, that desire. And so now turning it back to the panelists, you know, when you think about the job that you do, what was it that led you? What was your passion? What was that motivation to start doing this work that you do? Let's start with Philippe.
Okay, yeah, sure. It's a great question. I mean, I mentioned to you, I think when we were kind of talking about me coming on as a speaker or whatever, panelist, that I sort of realized that, well, I do marketing, right? And I've been doing it for the past, well, almost 19 years. So I think what I realized was that this choice was a sort of a really extreme way of kind of masking and trying to do something that would kind of prove to myself and the world that I can kind of like fit in and sort of, yeah, do something that's deemed, you know, desirable, productive, whatever kind of the capitalist society sort of projects that is worthy of that is worthy, period. So yeah, I changed from my original, that was ages ago. I studied English originally, but I got kind of spooked that I would end up, you know, kind of alone and without any money. So I studied business, and yeah, I was just like constantly fighting against basically my own nature in a way. Although I did manage to use some of my traits as a marketer, I would say as well. I mean, it does require kind of visual thinking skills, a good deal of logical reasoning. All of that kind of comes on in the job. But yeah, I was basically trying to take care of the future self, you know, make sure that I don't end up somewhere bad. And then the self-employment part, I don't know if that made complete sense. Feel free to ask me more about it. But the self-employed part came really from, yeah, as I said, I've been self-employed for 10 years, but by then I was already having like several experiences with corporate settings, or even just different work settings that required daily, you know, commuting and going somewhere and working with other people, that never sort of ended up okay in the end. So yeah, plus the typical, you know, kind of challenges of a workplace in terms of, yeah, sensory overload as well. I mean, I discovered online platforms where you could find work as a marketer, and began picking up work there. And yeah, since then I've evolved, and I worked again as a full-time employee, but I always tend to kind of gravitate, yeah, that's the word, back to self-employment. And I think it's sort of out of necessity. I absolutely don't like, and I have to daily deal with the sort of insecurity factor of working as a self-employed person, but you do get somewhat better at it over time. And yeah, I mean, I prefer that in the end rather than the alternative, which is which can be very hit or miss. I did work in environments that were kind of innately neurodivergent friendly, let's say, because the workforce was consisting of a lot of neurodiverse people. but yeah, that can be very hit or miss. And I had some also negative experiences in those that aren't friendly. So yeah, to sum up, I don't know if you already put the fingers, I didn't pay attention, but yeah, I mean, basically self-employment has allowed me to, you know, earn my living, but avoid the daily kind of brunt of having to mask in a usual setting. So
Yeah.
it's that.
Good.
Did that answer the question that you asked?
You did. Now
Okay.
pick the person to follow you.
All right. So Angela, hi.
Thank you, Philippe. I'm going to try to make this very concise. So, an ADHD diagnosis 23 years ago, when I was 22 years old, helped me make the decision to be a teacher so that people would not have to experience some of the things that I experienced. In that process, of course, not knowing or understanding my own autistic side, I created a very sensory relevant classroom with STEM toys and, rugs on the floor with different textures and seating arrangements that were for the kids could sit however they wanted. They could sit on the floor, lay on the floor, under the table. I had a trampoline in the classroom, spinny chairs, yoga balls, because that's what I needed. Never, ever, ever did I have overhead lights on. I had lamps in my classroom. And I fought for that right because fire marshal and all of that with cords and having to make sure that it's safe. And so I always had, I allowed the ADHD brain to really kind of rule me and decide where I was going to go. And I'm grateful for that. But in that process, I continued being passionate about communication and the stress response cycle and really hearing what other teachers were saying and going through and being kind of that go-to person, while always being consistently frustrated that I was always the one who had to not have things my way in order for other people to have things their way, because I was more capable of being calm, cool, and collected, and that sort of thing. And I'm not at all. So I would save that for after work, right? And I was very, very, very good at work and very, very, very bad at home. And so my interest in the stress response cycle and nervous system regulation for the students, for their parents and the community. I worked in low socioeconomic communities and really concerned about economic security for the communities that I worked within and the students and families, but also the teachers. Teacher burnout is one of those things that people talk about all of the time. So studying that and that being a huge passion of mine led me then into coaching, which led me into more studying of stress response and nervous system, which being a queer person as well, led me to going back to my ideal that I said I was going to do when I was 15, and that was to become a sexologist. So I did that. Military life allowed me to step away from education and start my own business as a sexologist. Thank you. And so I did that. And through that, continued working on the how do we communicate best? And how do we have pleasure in our lives at the same time that we're having discomfort? And we can be melancholy and happy all at the same time. Led me into having conversations after I got my autism diagnosis to Umbrella Alliance and helping the community. We have to be a community-led space in order for change to happen. Kayla.
Hi. So what motivates me anyway is getting a paycheck. That's pretty much how it works. Like Philippe said, it's capitalism. In the US that hits so much harder. What led me to do my day job is that I'm kind of like what Dylan was saying, he's like a Siri. And that's where I feel like the most nourished. Like if I can become an expert on all the things, and then if someone has a question, I'm like, oh, I know it's this. What else do you want to know? Let's go. It's not why I'm there, but that's kind of, different, there's different factions of the organization. And then I'm kind of, at least I like to think that I'm the person that knows the things that can help them out or point them to a resource that can. And that's what gets me going. That's why I still kind of work in that industry, because and then on the theater side of it, because I was a theater kid and I still kind of work on it on the side. I'm really loud and obnoxious. And I know a lot of directors love that because they can save budget on mics. And then also, one thing I didn't notice as a young person on the spectrum, scripts, they have like they have the setting, there's in brackets the emotions, there's like it literally tells you what to say and how to say it, and real life doesn't provide that. So that's kind of what kept me going in that realm. Popcorn, Grace. I picked you last time.
That's okay. I'm back, so I don't need you to pick me last. Well, right now I am self-employed. So the reason why I'm self-employed isn't because out of necessity because of being autistic, but out of necessity because we wanted a little bit of work-life balance when my son was born. Childcare skyrocketed from the last child I had, and we decided that it was just more worth it to our budget and to our life for me to work from home part-time and care for him full-time than it was for us to pay enormous amounts of money and have me at the office full-time. So that's why I work part-time from home and have my own business. But to be honest with you, I don't like the tax side of running my own business. I'll be honest with you, that's not my favorite part of it. I mean, I have my own tax people. I just don't like how it's more taxes that way. So
Right.
I would personally rather be a W-2 employee just for that fact. But it is nice to have all the flexibilities that come with it. So there are give and take to it. There is a lot that I get from being my own employer. But then again, I also have to be, I do have bosses in the sense that I have clients, and right now I only have one client. She's pretty easy to work with, but I did have one client who was even easier to work with and another client who was so hard to work with, I just couldn't even deal with her. And then she ended up disappearing on me and not paying me at all. And so what do you do with that? So it's been kind of one of those balance things. Like it's really, really, really nice to have all of the bonuses of being my own boss, working from home, having the flexibility to work anytime I want, do anything I want. I can start work as early as I want or as late as I want. I can stay up as late as I want and work, or I can, do bits and pieces throughout the day and then kind of flex it all over the place. So it's really, really nice to do that. It's nice to have something that I don't have to have tight focus on so that I can also do other things at the same time. But at the same time, there are the downsides, it's hard to get clients in this economy. It's hard to get clients who don't have your best interest. And then you got to deal with it being higher tax rates and all that. So it has its pluses and minuses, but I will say that I am the nicest boss I've ever had. Aside from a couple of my clients. I'm pretty nice.
Hey. And Dylan is last. I believe, right?
Yep. Well, my motivation is simply my own experiences. So when I was born, I was put a couple of years after I was born, I was put into the foster care system, and then I was adopted. I was forced to be separated from my brother at the time. And then within a few years after my adoption, I got put back into the care system. So I went through around 5 families before I grew up. And it was during in the minutes between moving between the 4th and 5th family when I found out about my diagnosis. At the time, with a lot of things that were going on, I was very, very angry. I used to have very bad meltdowns. I didn't feel like anyone wanted me. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I just remember an anger that, to be honest, still hasn't really gone away. But once I was made aware of my autism, when I had teachers, they had to have whole new teacher training in the new school I went to, because they said they did great with special needs kids, and it found out, nope, they didn't. But once I started to learn about my autism, the teachers started getting better training. I was able to calm down a lot more. And I was always appreciative of everyone who'd done so much to be able to get me to that point. When I was 15, I wanted to give back. So my way, I asked the local council what I could do to give back, and they asked me if I'd be interested in doing some parent workshops. So I started doing that as a volunteer, and I built up on that. I ended up joining the local partnership board. So sitting with any kind of local government, health services, things like that, anything they're up to, I get to be a part of it, get to put my voice out there. I even got to help, I got asked to interview sponsors for opening a specialist new school. And that was really exciting. And I just realized I absolutely loved doing it. And I did teacher training as well. I got to do teacher training conferences. And I realized growing up that this was something I really wanted to do. But at the same time, because I was still volunteering, it wasn't paying any of the bills. So the issue I had, though, and this is why I ended up doing it self-employed, is I was still trying to work full-time whilst doing all my autism stuff. And because of my own experiences and knowing how bad it can be for people, I wasn't able to say no when I knew people needed help. So I was doing 30 hours a week at my last job, and I was trying to do all of this during evenings or my one day off, just chock-a-block full of meetings, and I burnt out massively. And I just realized, and I was trying to reflect on the burnout, on right, where can I improve? And I just realized, yeah, I think it's time now I'd start doing my autism work full time. I mean, it'll be 9 years this March. So when I had burnout last year, I was already doing it for 8 years as a volunteer. What didn't help is when some of the people I've been doing it as a volunteer for, when I went to them and said, look, I want to keep doing this, but I can't keep doing it for free. Some of them just said to me, yeah, we would have paid you if you asked, which really didn't help to find that out. So that's how I knew, yep, this is how I know this has to be me doing it as a business now. That was silly of me. So but what I've done is I've started cutting down my hours at that job, because I didn't want to just throw all my eggs into the self-employment basket if I still wasn't 100% ready. So I've just started cutting my hours down there to then build up my hours going self-employed. I think I'm finished there, because I've already mentioned my passion. So
You're fine. You're right. Okay. My last question is going to be, tell us about some of the challenges you have at the jobs you work, and also, are you getting the supports you need? And lastly, what do you think has been your greatest achievement in the work that you are doing? So this is going to be our final question, and then I have some remarks after everybody's done. So everybody that's watching us live, I ask you to stay around as best you can. But let's talk about, like I say, what are your challenges, and have you been able to get your supports or provide your own supports? And what do you think your greatest achievement is? Let's start with Grace on this one.
Ooh, trying to get me to be quick. Okay. I think that some challenges for me have been, I definitely have had a lot of toxic leaders. Definitely some toxic leaders, some toxic coworkers. Not everybody, obviously. So if you're out there and you think that I'm talking about you, it's probably not you. But but I've had quite a few, and they were terrible. And I think they were terrible to a lot of people, but I've had some that were just terrible to me. And I think that we are prone to being targeted. I think that people can see it. I think that there are predators who can see us for what we are, even if they don't know. And I think that there are toxic people who can see us for what we are, even if they don't know for sure. We don't have to, announce our autism for people to know that we're autistic, or to know that they can do something to harm us in one way or another, or to mistreat us, or to just know that they just don't like us for some reason and mistreat us. And I can say that because I feel like it's happened enough times that it wasn't just one person. So that's usually what happens with me. I don't think that any of my traits have caused it, because I think that I learn from each experience and try to avoid things that have happened to me before, and it still happens anyway. I think that it's hard to say my greatest achievements. I'm not exactly a toot my own horn kind of person. I think that growing a community with autistic people is one of my favorite things in life right now. So I'm just going to go with that, and I'm going to let the next person go. So let's go with, I want to hear from Kayla next.
All right. So my greatest achievement, I feel just the fact that I am full-time employed, at least for now, is just an achievement, because when I got my diagnosis, they were I'm not going to be able to do this, that, nothing pertaining to independence. Not going to get into detail, but I wasn't supposed to be doing any of the stuff I'm doing now. So yeah, that's an achievement. Oh my gosh, what was the other question? Oh, what were some barriers in the workplace?
Maybe what some are your challenges, and have you gotten the supports for those challenges? I mean,
yes. So as Grace was saying, there's I'm so targeted because of who I am. And every office job I've had, it's like I'm the first or only person with autism there, because it shows. I don't know what, but it's like the energy is very different, and it's very annoying, because it's like, yes, I have the S tier masking to get through what I got to get through, do what I need to do, but there's still so much disconnects. Okay. Forgot what I was going to say. Oh, supports.
yes.
So last summer, real life happened. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety. Going back to work, I kind of had to fight to get like mental health FMLA days. It was, I don't know if that's an isolated experience, because it seems like with that organization, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, me too. And it's like, oh,
yeah. Right.
Gosh. So having to kind of fight for those things where it's just like, you know what, nothing I'm doing is that deep where I need to be there every day. And some people don't get that, and it's very frustrating. Like, yes, I'll take the L on the day, on the numbers, whatever, but when I am there, I want to be in go mode, because that's why you're paying me.
Right.
And yeah, as far as supports, like the ones I am given, like I like to have clicky pens. That's kind of my big stim. So that's why I usually ask for these. And it looks like it's censored. It's not. It's just the fog in the back. But yeah, did I get everything?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay. Popcorn. Is AJ talked yet?
No. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Angela. Oops.
Okay.
Oh, let me there. I'll unmute you. That way you don't have to. What is going on here? Yeah, unmute yourself.
Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, so challenges. Communication. That's always the biggest challenge. Like, I can see it, I can see where it needs to go, I can see what needs to happen, and this could be a 2-minute conversation. And we're spending 2 weeks talking about this shit. Like, come on. That drives me insane.
Mhm.
But because that's my communication style and not the social script of how communication should work, I am the one who has to accommodate that and be really flexible with my time. So that has always been a big challenge for me, and probably also why I studied it so hard, so that I could survive. So that was always my biggest challenge. The burnout that happens from communication, from doing that for a long time. Supports. I am a stimmer.
Mhm.
So I have lots of different things. I move and play with stuff constantly all the time. I would say that there were a lot of times where I didn't have the supports that I needed and I did not know how to advocate for it, even though I could see it for other people and help advocate for them. And then so that ended up with lots of burnout. Once I was able to have some self-awareness, and then be able to advocate for myself, I was able to get a couple of people and community, which is really the biggest support. Self-care is not something that supports me well, especially coming from a low socioeconomic background myself, and understanding that self-care is not something you can buy. So I get wellness through my community. That's the support that I have. My greatest achievement would be the fact that I now have the ability to find harmony between the work that I do and following that and loving that and being good at it, and also having a really healthy relationship with my partner.
All right.
Dylan.
There we go. Well, biggest difficulties for me is just basically an outright discrimination. Because my talks were the first time I ever did any kind of volunteering, that they went straight on my CV. And one of the first job interviews I ever went to, I got asked at the interview, how do I solve the problem that is autism? I mean, my response was I burst out laughing and said, here's how, don't see it as a problem.
I have to laugh at those. I have to laugh at those things, otherwise I get too depressed. But go ahead.
And then during the pandemic, when I was unemployed and I was getting a work coach, just to try and get myself something to float by when I was living away from the family, I was told to remove all of my autism stuff off my CV, including the work I do with local government, including being a school governor, or being invited to be a school governor at that point. I hadn't accepted, but I'd done work with that school. I was told to take it all off because the work coach said it shows you have autism, therefore you are unemployable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they've been the main things. It's just outright discrimination when they see autism on my CV, though I refuse to take it off. But when it comes to my greatest achievement, I think it's partially my network and where I am today. You know, if you'd asked me when I was 10 years old, I first learned about autism, if I could see myself where I am now, you know, happy with my family, happy with what I'm doing work-wise, I'll never be able to tell you who this person is. They'd look like a complete stranger to me. But my network's become so big. I've been invited to do talks across the UK. You know, I know I'm meeting like-minded individuals across the world. I'm able to run advocacy groups. You know, I'm now having people from major organizations who I've worked with in the past. When people come to them, they're recommending me. And be able to have my name being brought out there. Just, I think for me, I won't ever have a bigger achievement than that.
Yeah.
Philippe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, easy choice. But I mean, all of this has been amazing. I just wanna, yeah, sorry, first I need to gather my thoughts.
Sorry.
The challenges, right? Well, I mean, I really recognized I wasn't gonna talk about that, but definitely the like toxicity of people that I worked with, and particularly, I think I've built my career around the ability to attract kind of narcissists that sort of use my idealistic nature, so to speak. Because yeah, I work typically with, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna regret talking about this, but because I work with startups, a lot of founders and a lot of kind of CEOs are actually kind of narcissistic. And in the past, and it still sort of actually happens, I've easily been, yeah, swayed by these people, and because I was kind of maybe really wanting to, especially when I was younger, I was trying to make my name as a marketer. So I didn't, of course, maybe even recognize those traits of theirs at first, but I think, yeah, being autistic puts me at their crosshairs more, so to speak. So that's one thing, but the other couple of things, I mean, we could have a whole call, I think, about the challenges.
Yeah.
Is yeah, just sort of dealing with people. It's, let's say, it's a form of discrimination. It's
It
dealing
is.
with people that do not even, have any concept of neurodiversity yet. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but it was funny because today I had a call with like an advisor of our company that I kind of talked second time ever, and I was invited to, yeah, have an update on a project that we're working on
Yeah.
around rebranding. And anyway, I didn't even know that I was being kind of assessed, but I got sent feedback after that, and it said things like, I mean, it's so funny because it's all of the things that we mentioned before and the kind of typical things that are mentioned in terms of autism. I talked too much. I have to learn to listen. I'm not 100% clear in my thinking. I felt the need to answer all of the question in detail. So all of these traits, especially ever since I kind of deliberately stopped masking, all of these traits can really kind of trigger neurotypical people. And I mean, I've received this type of feedback throughout my life, and it used to be sort of, always in the context of, oh, you just need to learn how to grow up or how to grow out of that, instead of like celebrating them actually that way. So yeah, that's definitely one thing, like kind of finding myself face to face with neurotypical people that maybe I didn't even have a chance to yeah, sort of not warn, that's horrible, but I do try to give context to people when I meet them nowadays, whether in job interviews or, yeah, meeting clients or kind of partners, but you can't always do that, so it kind of results often in these mismatched expectations. And then, yeah, that's just the first part. But I think that, yeah, in terms of support, I'm pretty satisfied with the current company, I have to say. I've been open about my neurodiversity from day one. They were extremely open-minded about it. I've shown stimming in front of them and talked to them about it. I've talked about sensory sensitivity. I mean, the adjustments come from the fact that, first of all, I don't work at the office, which would not last long. And yeah, just from not full time, so that's already a great deal of support. And then finally, just the achievements. Yeah, I mean, just the longevity of my self-employed odyssey has been, I think, a great achievement of mine, but I do have to say that it's definitely not without support of my partner. because you know, it's really hard to yeah, okay.
You okay?
I'm sorry.
No. Okay. All right. Thank you everybody for giving us those answers. And I do apologize and a little to the audience for running a little bit over, but I do have some final remarks here. First of all, to Dylan and others who have experienced some kind of discrimination or problems on the job, I know exactly what you mean. And all of us here, I'm pretty sure, can say we know what you mean. And to the point that really nobody should really have to ever go through that, really. The fact remains is that there is still so much ignorance around autism and autistic people that just remains to be unacceptable. But for whatever reason, there are those in the society that think that it is acceptable to tell somebody, you know, at what point does your autism no longer get there? Or, you know, it's like, well, at what point does your brain not actually work? Because mine works as an autistic brain, yours doesn't. So let me know when your brain starts working like mine. And of course, I'll say no way. Well, the point being is that I think we have to celebrate a little bit because each of us who is here and many people who are listening and watching, we do have things that we are very capable of doing. I like to tell the people on podcasts that it's a matter of finding that something you're passionate about and finding a way to put it to use. Now, I want to also emphasize what I said earlier, that autistic people do not have to measure success the way the neurotypical majority world does. We do not have to set our matter of success on how other people define it. Our success is going to be a different type of success, but it's still successful. And even if others can't recognize it for what it is, that doesn't mean that we can't recognize it for ourselves. And what I love about the autistic networks on like LinkedIn and that sort of thing is we are meeting other autistics that we can celebrate our work with and get some feedback for and get that support that we often need, because as you've all been discovering, we've all been discovering that getting it outside of the autistic community is really difficult, if impossible. But I can tell you that about a month ago, I released my 50th episode of Today's Autistic Moment, and it really was an incredible moment for me to have recorded 50 shows, because in January 2001, when I started it, I had no idea where it would go. What I did know is that I had something for adult autistics that we needed. There's a lot of information out there about autistic children, but when it comes to autistic adults, the stuff is just not out there like it should be, although it's getting a lot better. And so I said, I want to do something that's going to make a difference, even if it's to a small group of people. As far as I'm concerned, that's a success. Well, about a month ago, when I had my 50th show, I got, for me, the greatest compliment I could ever get when all three of my guests said to me that my podcast has become a safe space for autistics to talk and feel like their voices are not being silenced or closed down or spoken over. That is an incredible gift to me that tells me that the podcast is doing something right. I know the same thing that you know. You try to tell your story to somebody about what it is about being autistic. that may be affecting a social situation or an employment situation, they look at you like you have no idea what you're talking about, even if it's your brain you're talking about. You just don't know what you're talking about. And I've become convinced that I'm just so tired of hearing that. That is so not true. And so like for my own work environment, I work from home in my home office here. And what I love about it, I can set my own hours. If I need to rest to recollect myself, I can do that as long as I release what I got to do. I can set up my interviews in a way that, you know, they work within the time frame so that I get everything lined up and done. It all works very well. In terms of getting paid a lot of money for it, I can't say that, but quite frankly, I don't care. My number one interest is that the fact that autistic individuals like these 5 people and the many people who have been on my podcast, we get to tell our stories, and for a change, we feel like we're getting heard, even if it's by other autistics, because I think all of us can also say by being here and just listening to other autistics say that they're going through the same things, they're having similar challenges. It makes us feel we're not alone in this. We're not the only ones. And that we share in these experiences and that we have these experiences. And even if we're not being supported by people we should be, we can be supportive of each other because we all know we're telling the truth to each other. So I just think this has been an excellent conversation. I think this has gone extremely well, and I do hope that our audience has gained a lot from it, and that you as panelists, that you have gotten some energy from it that you can use in whatever situation you find yourself in. To those who are watching, who may want to be a panelist in the future, please listen to my podcast, because when the time comes that I decide I'm going to do it, I'm going to do a new one, I will announce the date as well as the topic, and I will give you a time frame to send me to fill out a form. You need to get that to me by the 30th or 31st of the month that I'm calling for, because after that I've got the panelists and I'm sending them information, and I can't just add somebody in when I feel like it. But there will be 2 more this year. I invite you to go back to at Today's Autistic Moment on the YouTube channel and watch some of the previous shows that I've had, including this one. It will be there. We're not moving it. And you should be able to watch the show and also read the captions below. But this service is here for you. And I'm so pleased to give it to you as something that you can find some support from, because as autistics, we need that support, because as many of our panelists, we're just not getting it from other places. My last advice, I always say this on my shows. You'll hear me say this time and again. Number 1, you become the expert about your own brand, make, and model of autism. Number 2, you become the expert about communicating about it. And number 3, you continue telling your stories about what being autistic means for you. Even if it appears like there are people on the other end that aren't hearing you, you keep telling it. You keep working at it. Because the point is that we're talking to people who aren't autistic, and that means we're talking a language that they don't understand. But that doesn't mean that we should stop talking. So keep doing that, and Autistic Voices Roundtable discussions and Today's Autistic Moment. This is your space to be telling your stories. So thank you again for everybody being here, and you are more than welcome to, as I say, continue to watch the show. I'm going to exit the live spot at this moment and spend some time with the panelists, sort of debriefing a little bit before we part. So thank you so much for being here, and please check out Today's Autistic